Before Jesus comes back, Israel will be at peace. This peace is what will usher in the Antichrist. But before that, there will be a large-scale war coming from the north of Israel. Today, Joel Richardson is going to help us make sense of what the Bible says is going to happen next. Join us today. Okay, so let's do walled and unwalled villages, because right now, I mean, it feels like Israel is very walled. I mean, they're very secure. The West Bank, you know, the big walls. I was trying to explain that to people at Bible study last week, but you know, are those walls coming down someday before all this happens to make it an unwalled village? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Okay, so this is something where I actually have a difference of opinion with like my buddy Dalton. So he's taught on this, and he's like, Israel's a walled nation. Every kibbutz, every village has a wall. Yeah, it has a fence. You know, they've got security fences, especially border villages and settlements, etc. And yes, there is the big security wall between the West Bank and the rest of it, and that sort of thing. But again, Ezekiel 38 and 39, this is written like 3,000 years ago, or 2,900 years ago or so. The walled cities, walled villages. So in ancient times, you would have a fortified city with a big wall around it,
Okay.
and one single gate, usually one primary gate that they could close. Armies would lay siege, like Masada, right? Like that took them, I don't know, a year and a half before they built this ramp to try to overcome the wall. So it's referring to fortified cities and towns. Israel today is not a like, you know what I'm saying? Like you can just walk into Tel Aviv. If you can just enter the Israeli territories, they're not fortified cities. It's just a land, in my opinion, of unwalled villages. Okay. Yes, of course, there's fences. Of course, there's walls. It's not saying it's a land that doesn't have any walls or any security fences. I personally think it's talking about people who live in relative security. Now, that this is a debate. Does Israel live in security and peace right now? And the answer is, ask your average American, because you have, 4 million plus tourists every year that go to Israel. Do you feel really scared when you go to Israel? You go, no, I feel totally secure. I walk around. I'm not looking over my shoulder thinking I'm going to get killed or stabbed or invaded or attacked.
Right.
It's talking about a nation that is not expecting a multinational invasion. They know they have security issues, but for the most part, they live at peace.
Okay.
And so I personally believe that Ezekiel 38, 39 could be talking about right now. Okay. A good argument could be made. And, again, my friend Dalton makes that argument that there's no way that's referring to the Israel of today. It must be speaking of time when there was a much greater season of peace, where they fully are relaxed and unsuspecting. And that's possible. Yes. But let me give you an example just to help sort of tease this out a little better. Let's say that you're asleep in bed, and you're sleeping in your bed right next to your window, and there's a murderer outside of your window, and he's about to break in the window and kill you, but you're sound asleep. Okay. Are you at peace or not? And the answer is, yeah, you're sleeping at peace, unsuspecting, but you're in danger.
Right.
You're in danger because you're about to be attacked. And that's what I see Israel, what I see Ezekiel describing Israel as unsuspecting. It doesn't mean that they literally are secure. They believe that they're secure. They have a false sense of security, but they're about to be invaded. So it's a false sense of security.
So when we talk about the Jeremiah, where, you've got from the north, the cauldron, is this going to happen? Like, is this next on the list, or is this what they're talking about with the whole Revelation 20, like at the end, or like, how does this play out? Like, because he seems to be going in succession here in Ezekiel.
Okay. So Ezekiel 37 does not precede Ezekiel 38 and 39. This is one of the big mistakes that people say, well, they're supposed to unfold chronologically. No, they're all separate oracles. Ezekiel 38, 39 happens And then comes Ezekiel 37, which is the resurrection of the dead. Because a lot of people interpret Ezekiel 37 as
Israel coming back to the land or something.
Yeah, as Israel mystically coming back to the land, spiritual, it needs to be understood symbolically. It's not literally talking about flesh regrowing on bones and sinews, but that's what it says. And so the more spiritualized view says, well, this is symbolically speaking of the reestablishment of the land of Israel. No, it's actually speaking about the resurrection of the dead, the culmination. I mean, it's very literal. And it uses, again, imagery of a whole field of bones. But it's like, I will raise up these bones and I will clothe it with flesh. And it's talking about the resurrection. Okay. This is actually a debate that goes all the way back to the early church. Tertullian actually had a big debate that you can read with a Gnostic. And the Gnostic Christian was saying, oh, this is about the reestablishment of Israel at some point. And Tertullian is saying, no, this is about the resurrection of the dead. And it's funny that same debate continues in the church today. But to answer your question, Daniel is the one that really gives us the clearest pattern. Okay. And so what we should expect to see next is what I would expect, again, some speculation that this war will flare up.
War meaning not what's just happened with Hamas. We're talking a bigger war coming from the north. Is that right?
Yeah, in all likelihood, it will flare up with Hezbollah and, Iran, Syria, Lebanon, Hamas, all of the above, the UN, you name it, Turkey may even get involved. And then out of that, everyone will be hungry, thirsty, desiring peace. Okay. Now, again, that's assuming that we're this close. Then somehow in all of this, the Antichrist emerges as some type of a leader, a guy that everyone likes. There is some type of a regional peace treaty that now, look, there could be a peace treaty in the Middle East. That doesn't mean it's the peace treaty. Right. There could be any number that Saudi Arabia could do theirs, and that might not have anything to do with the Antichrist. Right. Christians are often too quick to say, this is that, as soon as they see the number 7 or whatever, they jump on it. Right. But there will be some type of a regional comprehensive peace. I personally expect to see, it looks something like Jerusalem will be shared. Right. It will become the international city of peace where Christians, Muslims, and Jews and all peoples can come together, and the temple will be rebuilt to some degree. They'll probably call it like the house of worship for all nations or this type of thing. There's very concrete plans to do that, by the way. And then 3.5 years into this agreement, the Antichrist calls foul and says, you guys violated, or, whatever, plays victim. And he violates he reneges on, he breaks his agreement, and he actually sets up on the Temple Mount this abomination, which is understood to be him actually sitting, the temple itself is essentially God's seat. It is the earthly extension of his heavenly throne, if you will. And so if you place yourself there in a seat of authority on the Temple Mount, you're essentially sitting in God's seat. Okay. That's the way it would be understood in any, ancient Near Eastern culture or biblical culture. And that is when the great persecution begins. So the last 3.5 years, that is technically the great tribulation. That is when hell on earth breaks loose against the Jewish people, against the global Christian community. And that is, again, in the most restricted sense, what is referred to as the great tribulation. Okay.